Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Black Echo. I'm so glad you're here with me today because I have a story that will send chills down your spine. A story about a mother's love, an innocent child, and something far more sinister than you could ever imagine. Before we begin, make sure you're comfortable. Maybe grab a blanket, dim those lights, because once we start, there's no turning back. This is the story of Helen and her daughter Anne. And trust me, by the end of this tale, you'll never look at a doll the same way again. London, a city of millions where life moves fast and everyone's caught up in their own world. In a small apartment on the outskirts of the city lived Helen and her 7-year-old daughter Anne. Helen was a single mother. Life hadn't been easy for her. Every morning, she'd wake up before dawn, prepare breakfast for Anne, get her ready for school, and then rush to her job as a salesgirl at a downtown shop. The pay wasn't great, but it was enough. Enough to put food on the table, enough to keep a roof over their heads, enough to see her daughter smile. And Anne, Anne was Helen's entire world. A bright, cheerful first grader with curious eyes and an infectious laugh. She loved drawing, playing with her friends, and most of all, she loved her mother. They were a team, just the two of them against the world. But sometimes the world has other plans. It was a Thursday afternoon. Nothing special. Just another ordinary day. Anne was playing in the school playground after class, running around with her friends, laughing without a care in the world. And that's when she saw it. Hidden behind the old oak tree near the fence, partially buried in the dirt and fallen leaves, was a doll. But this wasn't just any doll. No, this one was different. Anne walked closer, drawn to it like a moth to a flame. The doll was old, clearly abandoned. Its porcelain face was cracked, with paint peeling off in places. One of its glass eyes was slightly larger than the other, giving it an unsettling, lopsided stare. Its dress was tattered and stained, and its hair, matted and dirty, hung in tangled strands. But here's the strange part. Despite how damaged and disturbing it looked, Anne felt attracted to it, like the doll was calling out to her, whispering her name. "Come closer, Anne. Pick me up. Take me home." She reached down and lifted the doll from the ground. The moment her fingers touched its cold porcelain skin, something shifted. The air around her seemed to grow colder. The sounds of children playing faded into a distant hum. But Anne didn't notice. She was too busy staring into those mismatched glass eyes. "I'll call you Lily," she whispered, hugging the doll close to her chest. That evening, when Helen picked Anne up from school, she immediately noticed the doll. "Where did you get that, sweetheart?" Helen asked, eyeing the grotesque thing with concern. "I found her, Mommy. Her name is Lily. Isn't she beautiful?" Anne beamed, clutching the doll tighter. Beautiful, Helen thought. That thing looked like it belonged in a horror movie. The cracked face, those uneven eyes, the way it seemed to stare right through you. "Anne, honey, that doll looks really old and dirty. Why don't we throw it away, and I'll buy you a new one?" Anne's smile vanished instantly. Her eyes grew dark, and her voice dropped to a tone Helen had never heard before. "No, Lily stays with me." Helen felt a chill run down her spine. This wasn't like her daughter. Anne was always sweet, always obedient, but the way she was looking at her now, it was as if she was looking at a stranger. Okay, Helen said softly, deciding not to push it. "But we need to clean her up, all right?" Anne nodded slowly, a smile returning, but it didn't quite reach her eyes. That night, as Helen washed the dishes and prepared for bed, she couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong. She kept glancing at Anne's room, where her daughter sat on the bed, whispering to the doll. What is she saying? Helen wondered. And why does it feel like that doll is listening? The next few days were different. Anne stopped playing with her other toys. She stopped drawing. She stopped talking to her friends at school. All she did was sit in her room, talking to Lily. Helen would press her ear against the door and listen. Yes, Lily. I know, Lily. I'll do whatever you say, Lily. Helen's heart pounded. Who was her daughter talking to? What was she saying? And then came the behavior changes. Anne started waking up in the middle of the night, standing at the foot of Helen's bed, just staring, not saying a word, just staring with those blank, empty eyes. Anne, baby, what's wrong? Helen would ask, her voice trembling. But Anne would just turn around and walk back to her room without a word. Helen tried to take the doll away once, just once. She snuck into Anne's room while her daughter was at school, grabbed the doll, and tried to throw it in the trash. But as soon as she picked it up, she felt it. A wave of cold dread washing over her. The doll's glass eyes seemed to follow her movement, and then she heard it. A soft, childlike whisper in her ear. Put me back. Helen dropped the doll, her hands shaking, her heart racing. She looked around the empty apartment, but there was no one there. Just her and the doll. Terrified, she placed Lily back on Anne's bed and backed out of the room. Things escalated quickly after that. Objects started moving on their own. Helen would place her keys on the kitchen counter, only to find them in Anne's room minutes later. Pictures on the walls would tilt at odd angles. The television would turn on by itself in the dead of night, static hissing through the speakers, and the scratching. Oh God, the scratching. Every night, Helen would hear it. Scratching sounds coming from inside the walls. Slow, deliberate, like something was trying to claw its way out. She called a pest control service. They found nothing. She called a plumber. They found nothing. But the scratching continued. One night, Helen woke up to find all the lights in the apartment on. Every single one. She walked through the rooms, her heart pounding, and found Anne sitting in the living room with Lily on her lap. Anne, what are you doing up? Anne turned to her, and Helen's blood ran cold. Her daughter's eyes were completely black. No whites, no pupils, just black. Lily wants to play, Anne said in a voice that wasn't hers. A voice that sounded like it came from somewhere deep and dark and ancient. Helen screamed. Helen knew she needed help. This wasn't something medicine or therapy could fix. This was something else, something beyond the natural world. She went to a church near their neighborhood, St. Mary's Cathedral, and met with Father Michael, an elderly priest who had seen his share of darkness in the world. Through tears, Helen told him everything. The doll, Anne's behavior, the voices, the scratching, the black eyes. Father Michael listened intently, his expression grave. Mrs. Helen, he said slowly, what you're describing sounds like a case of demonic attachment. The doll is a vessel. Something evil is using it to reach your daughter. Can you help her? Please, Father. She's all I have. I will do everything in my power, he promised. But you must understand, whatever is inside that doll won't let go easily. We need to perform a blessing, possibly an exorcism, and it will be dangerous." Helen didn't care about the danger. She would walk through fire for her daughter. That very night, Father Michael came to their apartment carrying holy water, a Bible, and a crucifix. Anne was in her room, sitting on the bed with Lily. When she saw the priest, her face twisted into a grotesque smile. "You can't have her," Anne said, but it wasn't Anne's voice. "She's mine now." Father Michael began reciting prayers in Latin, sprinkling holy water around the room. The temperature dropped instantly. The lights flickered. The windows rattled violently. And then the doll moved. Not Anne, the doll itself. Lily's head turned toward the priest, and that cracked porcelain mouth seemed to open wider, releasing a sound that can only be described as 1,000 screams compressed into one. Helen held her daughter tight as Father Michael continued the ritual. His voice strong and unwavering despite the chaos erupting around them. "In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, I command you to leave this child." The room exploded with activity. Books flew off shelves. The bed levitated. Anne convulsed in her mother's arms, her eyes rolling back. And then, just as suddenly as it started, everything stopped. The doll fell to the floor, lifeless. Anne collapsed, unconscious but breathing. When Anne woke up hours later, she looked at her mother with clear, recognizable eyes. "Mommy," she whispered. "What happened?" Helen burst into tears, holding her daughter close. "It's okay, baby. It's all over now. You're safe." Father Michael took the doll, wrapped it in blessed cloth, and buried it in consecrated ground where it could never harm anyone again. Helen and Anne slowly returned to their normal lives. Anne started playing with her friends again. She started drawing. She started being the happy, bright child she once was. But sometimes, late at night, Helen would wake up and check on her daughter, just to make sure she was really there, really safe, really hers again. And every time she did, she would whisper a prayer of thanks, because she knew how close she came to losing her forever. So my dear friends, the next time you find something old and forgotten, something that seems to call out to you despite its disturbing appearance, remember Helen and Anne's story. Sometimes the things we find aren't lost by accident. Sometimes they're abandoned for a reason. Thank you so much for listening to this story. Thank you for being part of the Black Echo community. If this story gave you chills, if it made your heart race even a little, please let me know in the comments below. Share your own experiences, your own encounters with the unexplained. Until next time, stay safe, stay curious, and remember, some echoes are darker than others. This is Black Echo signing off.